The wind howled through the pines as the first flakes of snow began to fall against the weathered cabin windows. 9-year-old Olivia Reed stood motionless behind the door, her small fingers wrapped around the hunting rifle her grandfather had taught her to use. The weapon was almost as tall as she was, yet she held it with the steady confidence of someone far beyond her years. 2 winters alone on Blackwood Mountain had stripped away any childish hesitation. The knock came again, weaker this time. Not the heavy pounding of a bear's paw, but something else, something human. Olivia's breath fogged in the cold air of the cabin. Grandfather had always said visitors after dark meant trouble, especially in weather like this. But something about the desperation in those feeble taps pulled at her. She adjusted her grip on the rifle, positioning herself where the door would shield her small frame when opened, just as grandfather had taught her. "Who's there?" Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Only the wind answered at first, then, "Please, my daughter, we need help." A woman's voice, thin and frail. Olivia hesitated, her mind racing through the possibilities. Hunters rarely ventured this far up Blackwood this time of year, and the villagers believed the ghost child of the mountain had perished long ago. No one had climbed to her cabin in months. She unbolted the door, pulling it open just enough to peer through the crack with one eye rifle ready. The sight that greeted her made even Olivia's hardened heart catch a woman painfully thin, clutching a small girl of perhaps 5 to her chest. Both were soaked through by the freezing rain that had preceded the snow. The woman's face was gaunt, her eyes sunken with exhaustion, and something else Olivia recognized immediately, the distant look of approaching death. She'd seen it in grandfather's eyes 2 years ago. "Please," the woman whispered, her voice nearly lost in the wind. "Nowhere else to go." The little girl stared at Olivia with wide, frightened eyes, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit to her chest. Her pale face was streaked with tears, blue lips trembling from cold. Olivia hesitated. The isolation she'd built around herself suddenly felt tangible, like a wall she couldn't see past. Her instinct was to turn them away. The mountain was no place for strangers, especially the sickly woman and a child younger than herself. Her cabin barely accommodated her alone. Yet something in the child's frightened eyes pulled at a memory herself 2 years ago, watching her grandfather's labored breathing, knowing she would soon face the wilderness alone. "Come in," she said, finally stepping aside. As they crossed her threshold, Olivia felt a strange certainty that her carefully constructed solitude had just ended, whether she was ready or not. The woman collapsed into the room's only chair, her breathing labored and uneven. The little girl remained pressed against her mother's sad eyes, darting around the unfamiliar cabin, lingering on Olivia's rifle now propped against the wall. "I'm Sarah," the woman managed between shallow breaths. "This is Emma." Olivia set water to boil on the wood stove, her movements practiced and efficient. "Olivia Reed." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "Reed, James Reed's granddaughter." Olivia stiffened her back to the visitors. No one had spoken her grandfather's name aloud since the day she'd buried him. "Yes. They said you died in the forest after he passed." They were wrong. Olivia turned, facing them fully for the first time. "I stayed. This is my home." Emma hadn't spoken a word, her small hand clutching her mother's sweater, the stuffed rabbit dangling from her other arm. Olivia recognized the look in the child's eyes, not just fear, but the wary calculation of someone who had learned to be cautious around strangers. "You're the mountain ghost," Emma whispered suddenly, her voice surprisingly clear. "The children in town talk about you." A ghost. That's what she'd become to the village below. Olivia supposed it was easier for them to believe that than to accept that a 7-year-old child had survived alone in the wilderness they feared. Sarah's frame was racked by a sudden coughing fit, her thin shoulders shaking with the effort. When she pulled her hand away from her mouth, Olivia spotted the telltale specks of blood on her palm. "How long?" Olivia asked quietly. Sarah's eyes met hers, surprise and relief mingling in her gaze. Of course, the mountain child would recognize the signs. "The doctors gave me weeks, maybe a month." "The cancer." She broke off, glancing at Emma, who had begun exploring the small cabin, though never straying far from her mother. "Does she know?" Sarah nodded, her eyes following her daughter. "Children understand more than we think, but understanding doesn't make it easier." Olivia poured hot water into 3 mismatched mugs, adding pine needle tea, one of the first things grandfather had taught her to make. "Why here? Why me?" Sarah reached into the worn backpack at her feet, pulling out a newspaper clipping yellowed with age. Olivia recognized it immediately, the story that had run after the villagers' failed third attempt to find her. Mountain Ghost Child Survives Alone. The headline read alongside a grainy photo of the cabin taken from a distance. I read this when they first diagnosed me. Sarah's fingers trembled as she held the paper. Something about it stayed with me. A child surviving alone in a place where most adults would perish. That doesn't explain why you're here now. Olivia handed her a steaming mug. Sarah took a sip before answering. Emma has no one else. Her father. Her voice dropped to ensure Emma couldn't hear. Richard is dangerous. When I left him, he swore he'd find us. Said Emma belonged to him. Olivia watched as Emma carefully examined the wooden figures on the shelf. Bears, wolves, foxes, each carved with surprising detail. Grandfather had taught her carving to keep her hands busy during the long winter nights. You want me to protect her from him? Sarah shook her head, then winced at the movement. No, I want you to teach her to survive, like you did. The absurdity of the request hung in the air between them. Olivia was 9 years old, a child herself by any normal standard. Yet the woman before her was looking at her with the desperate hope of someone who had run out of options. I'm not even sure how I survived, Olivia admitted, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. Some days I'm still not sure I will. But you have. Sarah reached for her hand, her skin paper thin and burning with fever. For 2 years. Alone. The truth was, Olivia hadn't really been alone, not completely. Grandfather had prepared her, teaching her from the moment she could walk. How to hunt, how to read the weather, how to respect the mountain's power, while extracting what she needed from it. By 7, she'd known more about survival than most adults in the village below. When he died, the villagers had come for her. Well-meaning but ignorant of the bond between Olivia and the mountain. They'd planned to take her to a foster home in town, but Olivia had slipped away in the night, disappearing into the forest she knew better than they did. After weeks of searching, they'd assumed the mountain had claimed her as it had so many others who ventured unprepared into its depths. But the mountain had protected her. Or perhaps she had learned to move with it rather than against it. Either way, she had survived. She's 5 years old, Olivia said, glancing at Emma, who was now sitting cross-legged before the fireplace, whispering secrets to her stuffed rabbit. I was 7 when Grandfather died, and I'd been training my whole life. She's stronger than she looks, Sarah insisted, and smarter than most adults give her credit for. She just needs someone to show her the way. A gust of wind rattled the cabin windows, the storm intensifying outside. No one would be making the journey back down the mountain tonight, regardless of Olivia's decision. You can stay until the storm passes, she conceded. Then we'll talk more. Relief flooded Sarah's face, some of the tension leaving her frail shoulders. Thank you. Later, after making up a bed for Emma from furs and blankets near the fire, Olivia helped Sarah to the small cot in the corner. The woman's skin burned beneath her touch, her frame so light that Olivia could almost carry her, despite their size difference. There's something else you should know, Sarah whispered as Olivia helped her settle. About Emma's father. Olivia waited, saying nothing. He's not just dangerous because he's angry. There's something wrong with him. The villagers might call it darkness or evil, but whatever it is, it's drawn to Emma, like it can sense her vulnerability. Olivia frowned. The mountain people had their share of superstitions. Her grandfather had taught her many of them, but she'd learned to separate useful knowledge from fearful imagination. What do you mean? Sarah's eyes drifted to the far wall where a simple drawing hung, one of Grandfather's creations. Charcoal lines depicted 2 figures, one tall and dark with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. The other, a swirl of light resembling flames. The Kesandoi, Sarah whispered, using the old mountain term, the hunter in the shadows. A chill ran up Olivia's spine that had nothing to do with the cabin's temperature. Grandfather had told stories of the shadow hunter, a being that preyed on the sorrow of children, offering to take their pain, but demanding their souls in return. She'd always assumed they were just tales to keep her from wandering too far into the forest alone. How do you know about that? My grandmother came from these mountains. She told me the stories about the hunter and the flamekeeper. Olivia glanced back at the drawing. The flamekeeper, the protector who kept the hunter at bay. In the stories, it was often the spirit of a deceased mother or father who returned to shield their child from darkness. They're just stories, Olivia said, but the certainty she tried to project didn't quite reach her voice. Perhaps. Sarah's eyes were growing heavy, the exhaustion of their journey finally overtaking her. But Richard believes in them, seeks them, and that makes them real enough to fear. After Sarah fell into fitful sleep, Olivia sat by the fire watching the flames dance and thinking about the burden being placed on her young shoulders. A dying woman, a vulnerable child, a dangerous man who might come looking, and now talk of mountain spirits and shadow beings. She glanced at Emma sleeping peacefully with her rabbit clutched to her chest. The child looked so small among the furs, so defenseless. Yet Sarah believed Olivia barely more than a child herself could protect and teach her. The wind howled louder, tree branches scraping against the cabin roof like skeletal fingers. Olivia added another log to the fire, watching the sparks rise up the chimney toward the storm-black sky. The mountain was speaking tonight, its voice carried on the wind. Warning or welcome, she couldn't yet tell. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, catching dust motes and golden beams. Emma woke first, her small face momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings before memory returned. She sat up among the furs, clutching rabbit to her chest, watching Olivia prepare a simple breakfast of oatmeal and dried berries at the wood stove. "Is Mama still sleeping?" Emma asked, her voice small in the cabin's morning quiet. Olivia glanced toward the cot where Sarah lay motionless, her breathing shallow but steady. "Yes, she needs rest." Emma nodded solemnly, accepting this with the quiet resignation of a child who had grown accustomed to her mother's illness. She joined Olivia by the stove, standing on tiptoes to see what she was doing. "Can I help?" The question caught Olivia off guard. In 2 years, no one had offered to help her with anything. "You can set out the bowls. They're on the shelf there." Emma carefully retrieved 3 wooden bowls, placing them on the small table with exaggerated precision. "Mama says I'm a very good helper." "I'm sure you are." Olivia stirred the thickening oatmeal, unsure how to converse with this solemn child. Her own childhood interactions had been limited to her grandfather, whose conversations tended toward practical instructions rather than childish chatter. "Did you really live here all alone after your grandpa died?" Emma asked, returning to Olivia's side. "Yes." "Weren't you scared?" Olivia considered the question. Fear had been a constant companion those first months alone, but it had been a practical fear of starvation, of freezing, of injury, not the nameless dread that children usually feared. "I was too busy to be scared. Winter was coming. I had to prepare." Emma accepted this answer with a thoughtful nod, as if filing away the information for future reference. "Mama says you are going to teach me how to live here." The spoon stilled in Olivia's hand, so Sarah had already made promises to her daughter. "Your mother and I haven't decided anything yet. But we can't go back down," Emma stated simply. "Mama's too sick to travel again. And he might find us in the village." Umwa's eyes darted toward her sleeping mother, then back to Olivia. "My father, the bad man." Something in the way she said it, not with childish petulance, but with genuine fear, made Olivia's chest tighten. She'd seen enough of the world in her short life to know that some fears were well-founded. "Has he hurt you?" Emma shook her head. "Not me. Mama made sure, but he hurt her, and he said—" She hugged Rabbit closer. "He said when he finds us, he's going to take me away, where no one can ever find me." The oatmeal began to bubble, drawing Olivia's attention back to their breakfast. She removed it from the heat, trying to process this new information. A dangerous father searching for them added urgency to Sarah's request, but also made it infinitely more complicated. "Your mother is very brave," she said, finally spooning oatmeal into the bowls. "So are you?" Amar replied with the simple conviction of childhood. "That's why we came here." As they ate breakfast, a sound from the cot drew their attention. Sarah was awake, trying to push herself up to sitting. Olivia moved quickly to help her, alarmed at how much weaker she seemed than the night before. The journey up the mountain had clearly depleted what little strength she had left. "You need medicine," Olivia said, helping Sarah take small sips of water. "There's no medicine for this." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Not anymore." Emma brought her mother a bowl of oatmeal, her little face set in determination. "You need to eat to keep up your strength, Mama. That's what you always tell me." Sarah managed a weak smile, accepting the bowl, but setting it aside after one small bite. Her hands trembled too much to hold the spoon steady. "Olivia," she beckoned, her voice stronger with urgency, if not health. "There's a journal in my pack, and some papers. I need you to keep them safe for Emma." Olivia retrieved the worn leather journal in a sealed envelope from Sarah's backpack. The journal's pages were filled with neat handwriting and pressed flowers, a herbarium of mountain plants with detailed notes on their properties. "You know the mountain plants?" Olivia asked, surprised. Sarah nodded. "My grandmother taught me before we moved to the city. I've been documenting them for Emma." A coughing fit interrupted her, leaving her gasping for breath. When she recovered, she pointed to the envelope. "Legal papers. My will naming you as Emma's guardian." Olivia nearly dropped the envelope. "But I'm a child myself. No court would—" "Mountain law is different," Sarah interrupted. "Your grandfather would have told you that. The village elder will honor it, especially once he knows you're alive. And once he reads my letter explaining everything." "What everything?" Olivia's voice rose slightly. "You've told me almost nothing." Sarah's eyes darted to Emma, who had returned to the fireplace with Rabbit. "There's more to why we came here, why it had to be you." She beckoned Olivia closer, her voice dropping. "Look in the back of the journal. There's a photograph." Olivia flipped to the journal's back pages and found a worn photograph tucked inside. It showed Sarah, a younger Emma, and a man whose face had been partially torn away from the image. But what caught Olivia's attention was the cabin visible in the background, her cabin. This was taken here, but how? Not here specifically. Another cabin lower on the mountain, Richard's family cabin. "I don't understand." Sarah took a labored breath. "Richard's grandmother was Eliza Reed, your grandfather's sister." The revelation hit Olivia like a physical blow. She'd known grandfather had a sister, but he rarely spoke of her. Only that she'd left the mountain as a young woman, rejecting their way of life. "Emma is your blood, Olivia, your second cousin. I didn't come to you just because you survived alone. I came because Emma belongs with family who understands the mountain and its ways." Olivia stared at the photograph, at the torn image of the man who was apparently her distant relative. If he's family too, then why? "Blood doesn't always make someone family," Sarah interrupted, her voice hardening despite its weakness. "Richard rejected everything good about his mountain heritage. He embraced only the darkness." "The shadow hunter," Olivia whispered, remembering their conversation from the night before. Sarah nodded grimly. "He became obsessed with the old stories but twisted them. Believed he could harness the power of the hunter for himself." Her voice dropped even lower. "That's why I had to take Emma away. He wanted to offer her to it somehow. Said she was special because she could hear the mountain." Olivia glanced at Emma, who was whispering something to Rabbit, seemingly oblivious to their conversation. "What does that mean, hearing the mountain?" "I don't know exactly. Emma sometimes knows things when storms are coming, where animals are hiding, which plants are safe. Things she couldn't possibly know. Richard became convinced she had some connection to the mountain spirits." The fire popped loudly, sending sparks up the chimney. Emma looked up suddenly, as if responding to a sound only she could hear. "Snow's coming," she announced calmly. "A lot of it, by nightfall." Sarah and Olivia exchanged glances. The sky outside was clear blue, with no hint of the previous night's storm or any new one approaching. "She's been doing that since she was 3, Sarah whispered, "and she's never wrong about the weather." A chill ran through Olivia that had nothing to do with the cabin's temperature. Grandfather had taught her to read weather signs, clouds, animal behavior, wind patterns. But what Emma was describing was something different, something that couldn't be explained by careful observation alone. "Olivia," Sarah grasped her hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll protect her. Not just from Richard, but from whatever he's trying to use her for." The weight of the request pressed down on Olivia's narrow shoulders. She was 9 years old. How could she promise to protect anyone when her own survival was a daily challenge? Yet as she looked at Emma, this solemn child with her stuffed rabbit and her mysterious connection to the mountain, something shifted inside her. A recognition, perhaps, of shared blood, shared loss, shared understanding of things others couldn't comprehend. "I'll try," she said finally. It was the most honest promise she could make. Sarah seemed to understand this. That's all any of us can do. The day passed slowly, with Sarah drifting in and out of consciousness. Her moments of lucidity grew briefer, her breathing more labored. Olivia recognized the signs grandfather had followed the same pattern in his final days. Emma seemed to understand as well, sitting quietly beside her mother's cot, holding her hand, and occasionally whispering stories about Rabbit's adventures. The child's composure in the face of her mother's decline was both heartbreaking and remarkable. During one of Sarah's sleeping periods, Olivia took Emma outside to check the snare lines. The sky remained clear despite Emma's prediction, but Olivia noticed the birds had gone silent and the squirrels were frantically gathering last-minute stores, sure signs of approaching weather. "Your mother says you can hear the mountain," Olivia said carefully as they walked the forest path. Emma nodded, her eyes scanning the trees around them. "It talks all the time, but most people don't listen." "What does it say?" "Different things. Today it's saying to prepare." She pointed to a cluster of pine trees whose needles were shifting despite the lack of wind. "The snow spirits are gathering there. They'll start dancing soon." Olivia followed her gaze, seeing nothing unusual beyond the natural movement of the forest. Yet she couldn't dismiss the child's words entirely, not when the animals were clearly preparing for a storm despite the clear sky. "Is that how you knew about me? The mountain told you?" Emma shook her head. "I saw you in my dreams before Mama showed me your picture. You were sitting by a fire carving animals from wood. The mountain was keeping you safe." A rabbit darted across their path and Olivia instinctively grabbed Emma's arm to stop her from startling it. To her surprise, Emma made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. The rabbit froze, then hopped toward them, instead of away, its nose twitching curiously. "Grandfather taught me to be still in the forest," Olivia whispered, amazed at the rabbit's approach. "But I've never seen one come closer." "They're curious," Emma replied simply. "If you're not afraid, they sometimes want to be friends." The rabbit came within a foot of them before something in the distance spooked it, sending it darting back into the underbrush. The moment was broken, but its impact lingered as they continued checking the snares. By the time they returned to the cabin, Emma's prediction was beginning to manifest. Clouds had gathered on the horizon, and the wind had picked up, carrying the distinct scent of snow. Sarah was awake, sitting propped against pillows with visible effort. Her face brightened when Emma entered, though the smile couldn't disguise the gray pallor of her skin. "Did you learn something new today?" she asked as Emma settled beside her. "Olivia showed me the snares and how to check if they're set right, and we saw a rabbit that came right up to us." Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, her eyes meeting Olivia's over the child's head. "That sounds wonderful." While Emma recounted their walk in detail, Olivia prepared a simple stew from the previous day's rabbit and stored root vegetables. The domestic scene felt strange after 2 years of solitude, yet there was something almost familiar about it too, as if the cabin itself remembered when it had been filled with family. As night fell, the storm arrived just as Emma had predicted. Snow fell heavily, driven against the windows by howling wind. The temperature dropped rapidly, prompting Olivia to build up the fire and add extra blankets to Sarah's cot. "Winter comes early this year," Olivia observed as she checked the cabin's seals against drafts. "The mountain is preparing," Emma said, her eyes fixed on the window where snowflakes swirled in the darkness. "It knows something is coming." "The snow?" Sarah asked, her voice weak but curious. Emma shook her head. "Something else. Something looking for us." Sarah's eyes widened with alarm, her gaze flying to Olivia. "Did you see anything unusual when you were out today? Any signs someone might have followed us?" "No." Olivia moved to the window, peering out into the swirling whiteness. "No one could have followed your tracks up here. The rain last night would have washed them away, and now the snow is covering everything." "Not him," Emma said quietly. "The shadow hunter. He's looking for me." The fire crackled loudly in the sudden silence that followed her words. Sarah reached for Emma's hand, pulling her closer to the cot. "It's just a story, Emma. Remember what I told you. Stories can be powerful, but they can't hurt you unless you let them." But Emma's expression remained serious, her eyes never leaving the window. "He's real. Daddy said so. He said the hunter would find me wherever I went." Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafts seeping through the cabin walls. Grandfather had told her the old stories were based on truth, though distorted by time and retelling. The shadow hunter was said to be a spirit that fed on fear and grief, drawn to those experiencing loss. Children were especially vulnerable, their emotions pure and unguarded. "Even if he is real," Olivia said firmly, drawing the curtains closed, "he can't enter this cabin. Grandfather made sure of that." She pointed to the small carvings above each window and door, protective symbols her grandfather had insisted on, though he'd never fully explained their purpose. Olivia had maintained them out of respect for his ways, even if she'd never fully believed in their power. "The Flame Keeper marks," Sarah whispered, recognition in her voice. "Your grandfather remembered the old ways." Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Like the ones in your book, Mama." "Yes, exactly like those." Sarah beckoned to Olivia. "In my journal there are drawings. My grandmother made them." Olivia retrieved the journal, turning to pages filled with intricate symbols similar to those carved into the cabin's woodwork. Beneath them were notes in faded handwriting different from Sarah's. "Protection against the shadow," Olivia read aloud. "Maintain the circle unbroken." Emma pressed her palm against one of the window carvings. "It's warm." Olivia touched it herself, feeling only the cool wood beneath her fingers. But she said nothing, not wanting to dismiss the child's perception. If Emma found comfort in the symbols, that was what mattered. As the night deepened, Sarah's condition deteriorated rapidly. Her breathing became more labored, her periods of consciousness briefer. Olivia recognized the signs from grandfather's pissing and prepared as best she could, heating water, gathering clean cloths, finding the strongest pine needle tea to ease Sarah's pain. Emma refused to leave her mother's side, even as it became clear that Sarah was slipping away. The child showed a composure beyond her years, wiping Sarah's brow with damp cloths and speaking softly to her, even when she appeared unresponsive. "You're very brave," Olivia told her during a brief moment when they stepped away to replenish the water. "Mama needs me to be brave," Emma replied simply. "So I am." In the deepest part of night, when the storm outside reached its peak, Sarah rallied momentarily. Her eyes opened clearer than they had been all day, and she beckoned both girls to her side. "Listen carefully," she whispered, her voice surprisingly strong. "There's not much time." Emma clutched her mother's hand, while Olivia leaned in close to hear over the howling wind. "Olivia, in my journal, the last pages, there's a map. It shows a cave system in the mountain. If danger comes, take Emma there." "I know the caves," Olivia nodded. "Grandfather showed me." "Not all of them." Sarah's eyes held a desperate intensity. "There's one that few know about. A safe place if you know how to find it." Emma's small face crumpled. "I don't want to hide in a cave. I want to stay with you." Sarah turned her gaze to her daughter, love and sorrow mingling in her expression. "My little flame, I'll always be with you, even when you can't see me. Remember what I told you about the stars? The brightest ones are the people who love us, watching over us." Emma recited, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "That's right." Sarah reached up with trembling fingers to unclasp the silver locket from around her neck. "And this will keep me close to your heart." She placed the locket in Emma's palm, closing the child's fingers around it. "There's a letter inside. Read it when you're older and can understand better." Emma clutched the locket to her chest, her small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Sarah turned back to Olivia, her strength visibly fading. "Promise me," she whispered. "Not as obligation, but as family. You'll raise her to know the mountain, to respect its power, to understand both its dangers and its gifts." The weight of the request pressed down on Olivia, a burden almost too heavy for her young shoulders. Yet as she looked at Emma, something in her chest tightened with resolve. This child was her blood, perhaps the only family she had left in the world. "I promise," she said quietly, taking Sarah's frail hand in hers. "I'll raise her as family." A single tear slipped down Sarah's cheek as she nodded. "Then I can go in peace." The storm raged through the night, tree branches scraping against the roof like skeletal fingers. Inside the cabin, Olivia and Emma kept vigil as Sarah's breathing grew shallower, the spaces between breaths lengthening until just before dawn, they stopped altogether. Emma, exhausted from the night's vigil, had finally succumbed to sleep, curled against her mother's side. Olivia gently separated them, covering Sarah with a blanket and carrying Emma to the pile of furs near the fire. The child stirred but didn't wake, her face tear-stained even in sleep. Olivia sat beside Sarah's body, uncertain what to do next. When grandfather had died, she'd been so consumed by grief and the immediate need to survive that she'd barely had time to process his passing. She'd buried him alone, digging through half-frozen ground until her hands bled, then continued the life he'd prepared her for. But now there was Emma to consider. A child too young to fully comprehend death, yet old enough to feel its impact completely. How did one explain to a 5-year-old that her mother was gone forever? The first pale light of morning gradually revealed the cabin's interior, and with it a strange sense of peace despite the circumstances. The storm had passed, leaving a world transformed by snow. Through the window, Olivia could see pristine white stretching in every direction, unbroken save for a single set of tracks leading from the forest edge to the cabin door. Tracks too large to belong to any animal that should be on this mountain. Olivia moved to the window, pulse quickening. The prints were massive, twice the size of a man's, with a strange, elongated shape that reminded her of the drawing on the wall, leading directly to their door, then stopping as if whatever made them had simply vanished or come inside. She spun around, scanning the cabin. Nothing seemed disturbed. Sarah lay peacefully, Emma slept by the fire, and all was still, save for the occasional pop from the dying embers. Yet something felt different. The air itself seemed charged, as if lightning had struck nearby. And there on the table where she'd left Sarah's journal, something new caught her eye. A small flame, no bigger than a candle's, danced above the leather cover. It cast no shadow, and when Olivia cautiously approached, she felt no heat radiating from it. The flame moved as if responding to her presence, growing slightly brighter before extinguishing itself completely. In its place remained a single scorch mark on the journal's cover, a perfect imprint of the Flamekeeper symbol from grandfather's carvings. Emma stirred on her bed of furs, mumbling in her sleep. "Mama, don't go with the stars yet." Olivia knelt beside her, unsure whether to wake her or let her cling to the last moments of unconsciousness before reality crashed in. The decision was made for her when Emma's eyes fluttered open, immediately searching the room. "Mama," her voice was small, hopeful. "Emma." Olivia began, gently choosing her words with care. "Your mother's journey ended in the night. Her spirit has gone to join the stars, but her love stays with you always." Emma's gaze moved past Olivia to the still form on the cot. "Is Mama sleeping?" "No," Olivia said gently. "She's not sleeping. Her body stopped working and she can't come back. But mountain people believe that our spirits live forever in the sky." She pointed upward. "Tonight there will be a new star watching over you." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter against her chest. The stillness in her grief unsettled Olivia more than screams would have. Children should cry, should rage against such injustice. This quiet acceptance felt wrong somehow, too adult for her small shoulders. Before Emma fully woke, Olivia noticed the silver locket clutched in the child's hand. She gently helped Emma place it around her neck, where it seemed too large for her small frame, yet somehow fitting. "She'll always be with you," Olivia said, indicating the locket. "And now we need to prepare to honor her passing in the mountain way." The mountain people had their own rituals for death, not the formal ceremonies of organized religion, but practices born from generations of living close to nature's cycles. Grandfather had taught Olivia these rites, and she'd perform them for him as best she could. Now she would show Emma, preserving the traditions that connected them to this land. Together they wrapped Sarah's body in her best blanket, placing wildflowers from her journal between the folds. The ground was too frozen for proper burial, but Grandfather had shown Olivia the alternative, a stone cairn on the eastern slope where morning sun would warm the rocks. As they worked, Olivia explained each step to Emma, her voice gentle but matter-of-fact. "We return her to the mountain that she came from. Her body feeds the earth, while her spirit joins the sky." Emma listened solemnly, asking occasional questions that revealed both her childish understanding and surprising wisdom. "Will the flowers grow from where Mama rests? Can she see us from the stars? Does it hurt to become a star?" Olivia answered as honestly as she could, drawing on Grandfather's teachings while adapting them for Emma's young mind. In doing so, she found herself reconnecting with beliefs she'd set aside in her focus on practical survival. When it came time to carry Sarah's body outside, Olivia realized she couldn't manage alone. Sarah had been frail, but Olivia's 9-year-old frame wasn't strong enough for the burden. She was considering what to do when a knock at the door startled both girls. Olivia reached for her rifle, pushing Emma behind her before cautiously approaching the door. "Who's there?" "Harold Morris," came the reply. "Village elder." Olivia recognized the name. Grandfather had spoken of him with respect. Still, she kept the rifle ready as she opened the door a crack. An elderly man stood on her threshold, his weathered face showing surprise as he took in her appearance. "By the stars, child, you are alive." "How did you find us?" Olivia demanded, not lowering the weapon. "Sarah's letter." He held up a folded paper. "She sent it before coming up here. Asked me to follow if she didn't return in 3 days. The mention of Sarah's name convinced Olivia to lower the rifle slightly. "She's gone last night." Sorrow crossed the old man's face. I feared as much when I saw the shadow's tracks leading here. May I come in? There's much to discuss, and the little ones shouldn't hear it all. The mention of the tracks made Olivia's decision. She stepped back, allowing him inside. Emma had retreated to the corner, with Rabbit watching the stranger warily. Harold Morris, Olivia said to Emma, the village elder. He knew your mother and my grandfather. Emma said nothing, but her grip on Rabbit relaxed slightly. Mr. Morris surveyed the cabin, his gaze lingering on Sarah's wrapped form. You've prepared her in the old way. Good. I can help you with the cairn. His matter-of-fact acceptance of their situation loosened something tight in Olivia's chest. She hadn't realized how heavily the responsibility was weighing on her until someone offered to share it. The shadow hunter, she said quietly, ensuring Emma couldn't hear. You mentioned tracks. They're real. The old man's eyes were grave as he nodded. As real as you and I. The mountain has its spirit's child. Your grandfather knew that. It's why he taught you the protections. Olivia glanced at the symbols carved above the doors and windows. I maintained them out of respect, but I never really believed. Belief isn't necessary for protection. Only respect. He moved to the window, gazing out at the snow-covered landscape. The hunter is drawn to grief and fear, especially in children. It feeds on their pain, promising relief, but taking their essence instead. Emma said it was looking for her, that her father told her it would find her. Mr. Morris's expression darkened. Richard Bennett. Yes, Sarah's letter mentioned him. He's been obsessed with the old ways for years, but twisted them to his own purpose. He believes he can harness the hunter's power somehow. Using Emma. A nod. The child has the gift. She can hear the mountain in ways few can. Richard wants to use that connection. Olivia looked over at Emma, who was now arranging pine cones in careful patterns on the floor, whispering to Rabbit as she worked. How could anyone want to use such a gentle child for dark purposes, especially her own father? What do we do? She asked, the question encompassing far more than just the immediate situation with Sarah's body. First, we honor Sarah properly, then we prepare. Mr. Morris placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. The hunter has found them once. It will return, especially with the child's grief so fresh. And where the hunter goes, Richard will follow. The grim prediction settled over the cabin like a physical weight. Olivia had survived alone for 2 years by understanding and respecting the mountain's power. Now she would need to protect not just herself but Emma as well from dangers both natural and supernatural. She straightened her shoulders, decision crystallizing within her. Then we'll be ready. Together, Olivia, Emma, and Mr. Morris carried Sarah's body to the eastern slope. The journey was slow, their footsteps breaking through the fresh snow with each step. Emma insisted on helping despite her small size, carrying her mother's journal and a bundle of dried flowers to place with the body. As they arranged the stones for the cairn, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the pristine white landscape. Olivia showed Emma how to select the right stones, flat ones for stability, rounded ones to represent the cycle of life returning to the earth. Like building a home for Mama, Emma asked, as she placed a smooth river stone atop the growing structure. Yes, Olivia nodded. A home for her body to rest while her spirit travels among the stars. Mr. Morris spoke the traditional mountain words of passage, his deep voice carrying across the snowy slopes. Emma listened intently, her small face solemn beyond her years. When the final stone was set, she placed her hand against it. Goodbye, Mama, she whispered, her first tears finally spilling over. Watch me from the stars. As they turned to head back to the cabin, Olivia noticed fresh tracks in the snow. Near the tree line, the same oversized, elongated prints she'd seen earlier. They hadn't been there when they arrived. Mr. Morris followed her gaze, his expression grim. It's watching. Testing. Emma seemed to sense it too, pressing closer to Olivia's side. The shadow hunter, she whispered. He wants me to go with him. Says he can take away the sadness. Don't listen, Olivia said firmly, taking Emma's hand. Some pain we need to feel. It's how we honor those we've lost. Back at the cabin, Mr. Morris helped them secure the doors and windows, checking that each protective symbol remained intact. He added a few more that Olivia didn't recognize, carving them into the wood with practiced precision. The hunter cannot enter where these are maintained, he explained, but it can still call to those inside, tempting them out. He turned to Emma, kneeling to meet her at eye level. You must promise never to go outside alone, especially at night. No matter what voices you hear, no matter what they promise. Emma nodded solemnly, clutching her locket. I promise. After ensuring they had enough supplies for the coming weeks, Mr. Morris prepared to depart. He handed Olivia a small radio, a luxury she'd done without since grandfather died. Keep this on. Call if there's trouble. Channel 3. What about... Olivia glanced at Emma, who had returned to arranging pine cones by the fire. What about authorities, Emma's father, Will? They try to take her? The old man's weathered face creased with concern. Sarah's will naming you as guardian won't stand in a conventional court. You're a child yourself, but up here mountain law still holds some weight. I'll do what I can to keep the authorities at bay for now. It wasn't a reassuring answer, but it was honest. Olivia appreciated that. Thank you for everything. As Mr. Morris prepared to leave, he paused at the door, looking back at the two girls, one barely 9, the other just by him, alone in a cabin on a mountain where danger lurked in both natural and supernatural forms. Your grandfather would be proud, he told Olivia. He always said you had the mountain in your blood. His gaze shifted to Emma. Both of you do. Remember that. The mountain protects its own. With those words, he departed, leaving Olivia and Emma truly alone together for the first time. The responsibility settled onto Olivia's young shoulders like a physical weight, but as she watched Emma carefully arranging her pine cones into a pattern that resembled the protective symbols, she felt something else growing alongside it. A fierce, protective determination that surprised her with its intensity. This child was her family, perhaps the only blood relation she had left in the world. And family protected each other. That was the first and most important law of the mountain. That night, as darkness fell and the temperature dropped, Olivia found herself facing the first of many challenges. Bedtime without Sarah. Emma stood beside the pile of furs, clearly exhausted from the day's events, but unable to settle. Mama always sings, she said, her voice small in the cabin silence. Panic fluttered in Olivia's chest. She knew no lullabies had never sung to another soul, yet the lost look in Emma's eyes compelled her to try. Haltingly at first, then with growing confidence, she hummed a mountain melody her grandfather had often whistled while working a tune about eagles soaring high above the peaks, free from earthly concerns. As Emma's eyes grew heavy, Olivia gently touched the silver locket around the child's neck. Your mother is with you always, watching over you from the brightest star. Emma's fingers curled around the locket as she drifted into sleep, her grief-exhausted body finally surrendering to rest. Olivia moved her own sleeping furs to the floor outside Emma's corner, not close enough to intrude, but near enough that she would be the first thing Emma saw upon waking. Through the cabin window, moonlight streamed in, casting long shadows across the floor. Olivia lay awake, the enormity of her promise pressing down like a physical weight. She was no longer just a solitary mountain survivor. She was family now, the only family Emma had left in the world. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying sounds that might have been words if one knew how to listen. Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about the shadow at the window. Olivia rose silently, checking that the protective symbols remained intact above each opening. As she peered out into the moonlit snow, a movement at the forest's edge caught her eye. A figure stood there, impossibly tall and thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. It remained motionless, watching the cabin with eyes that reflected the moonlight like a predator's. The Shadow Hunter. Not a story, but a presence as real as the cold seeping through the window glass. Olivia's hand moved instinctively to one of the protective carvings, tracing its pattern as she'd seen her grandfather do countless times. To her surprise, the wood felt warm beneath her fingers, pulsing slightly as if alive. The figure at the forest's edge seemed to recoil, taking a step back before dissolving into the darkness between the trees. But Olivia knew it hadn't gone far. It was waiting, watching, looking for any opportunity to reach Emma in her vulnerable state of grief. We are protected, she whispered into the darkness, unsure whether she was trying to convince herself or warn whatever lurked outside. This is our mountain too. As if in answer, the fire flared briefly in the hearth, casting a warm glow throughout the cabin. Emma sighed in her sleep, her face relaxing into peaceful dreams. And outside, the first star of evening appeared in the darkening sky, brighter than any Olivia had ever seen, shining directly above Sarah's cairn on the eastern slope. Inside the cabin, a reluctant guardian began the process of becoming something she never expected to be: a protector, a teacher, a sister, family. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with dangers both mundane and supernatural. But in that moment, watching over Emma's sleeping form, Olivia felt a certainty she hadn't experienced since her grandfather's death. They belonged here, both of them, and together they would face whatever came. The scream pierced the night, jolting Olivia from sleep. She scrambled to her feet, disoriented before remembering Emma. The child's nightmare cries had become a nightly occurrence in the weeks since Sarah's passing. Olivia knelt beside the sleeping furs, her hand hovering uncertainly over Emma's trembling shoulder. "It's all right, you're safe." Emma's eyes flew open, wild with terror, before focusing on Olivia's face. "He was calling me," she whispered, clutching Rabbit to her chest. "From inside the mountain. Said he could take me to Mama if I followed him into the dark." A chill ran down Olivia's spine that had nothing to do with the cabin's temperature. Mr. Morris's warnings echoed in her mind, the shadow hunter drawn to grief, promising comfort while seeking only to consume. "Just a dream," Olivia said, though uncertainty tinged her voice. "Try to sleep again." But sleep remained elusive for them both. Olivia settled against the wall near Emma's corner, maintaining her nightly vigil until the child's breathing deepened once more. Then, as she had every night this week, she slipped outside to split wood by moonlight, the physical exertion the only remedy she knew for the knot of anxiety in her chest. The night air bit at her skin as she positioned a log on the chopping block. The moon hung full and bright overhead, casting sharp shadows across the snow-covered clearing. As Olivia raised the axe, movement at the forest edge caught her eye, a shifting darkness deeper than the surrounding night. She froze, axe suspended in midair. The darkness seemed to coalesce into a vaguely human shape, impossibly tall and thin. It remained at the tree line just beyond the boundary marked by the protective symbols Mr. Morris had reinforced around the cabin's perimeter. "You don't belong here," Olivia whispered, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "This is our mountain." The figure remained motionless for a heartbeat, then another. Then, as if acknowledging her claim, it receded into the forest, melting back into ordinary shadows. But Olivia couldn't shake the certainty that it had merely retreated, not departed. She finished splitting the wood with renewed urgency, each swing of the axe more forceful than necessary. By the time she returned to the cabin, pale dawn light was beginning to spread across the eastern sky. Emma still slept, her face peaceful now, one hand curled protectively around her mother's locket. Morning brought a break in routine. Emma, usually silent and withdrawn at breakfast, studied the porridge Olivia placed before her with obvious displeasure. "It's lumpy," she stated flatly, poking at the bowl with her spoon. Olivia blinked, surprised by the critique. "It's food. Mama made it smooth, with berries sometimes." Olivia sighed, running a hand through her tangled hair. Sarah had made everything seem effortless, cooking, cleaning, caring for Emma. Her own attempts felt clumsy by comparison. Yesterday's rabbit stew had been too salty, the day before's bread nearly inedible. "I'll try again tomorrow," she conceded, making a mental note to check Sarah's journal for recipes. After breakfast, Olivia spread a piece of birch bark on the table and began sketching with a charcoal stick. Emma watched curiously as mountains, trees, and the cabin took shape. "This base," Olivia explained, tracing a circle around the cabin, "is safe area. You can play here without asking." She drew another circle encompassing the nearby spring. "Water is here. Never go alone." Finally, she marked the distant tree line with heavy strokes. "Beyond these pines, never. Bears, wolves, steep drops. Understand?" Emma nodded solemnly, her finger tracing the map's boundaries. It wasn't much, the territory of childhood reduced to a few hundred yards, but the mountain forgave no mistakes, especially from those as young as they were. "What's this?" Emma pointed to a spot Olivia had marked with a star near the eastern ridge. "Your mother's cairn. We can visit, but only together." Emma studied the map with surprising intensity, as if committing every detail to memory. "Where's the cave, the one Mama mentioned?" Olivia hesitated. She knew the cave system her grandfather had shown her, a network of passages that honeycombed parts of the mountain. But Sarah had mentioned a specific cave, one that few know about. She hadn't yet had time to study the map in Sarah's journal. "We'll find it," she promised, "when the weather's better." The map joined Sarah's will and journal in the wooden box beside Olivia's sleeping furs. Having a child to care for meant having rules, and rules needed remembering. Midday found them at the creek where Olivia taught Emma to identify tracks in the mud. Deer, raccoon, fox, each leaving distinctive prints that told stories of their passage. Emma absorbed the knowledge silently, her only response an occasional nod. "Does your throat hurt?" Olivia asked, finally, unnerved by the child's continued muteness. Emma shook her head but offered nothing more. Her silence had become its own presence in the cabin, a third companion that followed them through the days. Olivia wasn't sure if it was normal grief or something more concerning. Her own experience with loss had been so different. Survival had demanded immediate action, leaving little time for silent reflection. As they made their way back toward the cabin, Emma suddenly stopped, her head tilting, as if listening to something Olivia couldn't hear. "Someone's coming," she announced, pointing toward the path that led down to the village. Olivia strained her ears, but heard nothing beyond the ordinary forest sounds. "Are you sure?" Emma nodded with absolute certainty. "Two people, a woman who walks hard and a man with a limp." The specific details sent a chill through Olivia. She hurried Emma back to the cabin, grabbing her rifle from its place beside the door. If Emma was right and some instinct told Olivia she was, they needed to be prepared for whoever was approaching. They didn't have to wait long. Within 20 minutes, the sound of voices reached the cabin, first indistinct, then clear enough to make out words as they approached. "Completely irresponsible of Morris to delay notifying us," a woman's voice declared, sharp with authority. "Two miners alone in the wilderness. It's unconscionable." "The elder follows mountain ways," a man replied, his tone conciliatory. "They have different concepts of—" "I don't care about mountain ways, doctor. I care about child welfare laws." Olivia positioned herself at the window, rifle ready, but not visible. Through the glass, she could make out two figures ascending the final stretch of path to the cabin, a tall, stern-looking woman in a practical coat and hiking boots, and an older man with a medical bag who walked with a noticeable limp. "Remember what I told you," Olivia whispered to Emma. "Let me do the talking." A firm knock rattled the cabin door. Olivia took a deep breath, set the rifle aside but within reach, and opened the door just enough to see their visitors clearly. "Olivia Reed." The woman didn't wait for confirmation. "I'm Diana Foster from Child Protective Services. This is Dr. Samuel Cooper from the village clinic." Ms. Foster's eyes widened slightly as she took in Olivia's appearance, smaller and younger than she'd apparently expected. Her professional demeanor faltered momentarily before she straightened her shoulders and continued. "We're here about the Bennett child, Sarah Bennett's daughter." "Emma," Olivia corrected, not moving from the doorway. "Her name is Emma." Dr. Cooper offered a gentle smile. "May we come in? It's rather cold out here." Olivia hesitated, then stepped back, allowing them entry, but keeping herself between the visitors and Emma, who had retreated to her corner with Rabbit. Ms. Foster surveyed the cabin with poorly concealed disapproval, her gaze lingering on the simple furnishings, the lack of modern amenities, the single room that served as kitchen, living area, and sleeping quarters. "Mr. Morris informed us of Sarah Bennett's passing," she said, removing a notebook from her bag. "I understand she left some sort of unofficial document naming you as guardian." The pause before unofficial carried clear skepticism. Olivia retrieved Sarah's will from the wooden box and handed it to Ms. Foster, who skimmed it with pursed lips. "This has no legal standing," she declared. "A handwritten note cannot override established custody procedures, especially when the proposed guardian is a minor herself." "Mountain law," Olivia began, "doesn't supersede state law," Ms. Foster interrupted. "The fact remains that you are 9 years old, living in dangerous isolation with no adult supervision. And now you've taken responsibility for a 5-year-old child under equally unacceptable conditions." Dr. Cooper cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could discuss the immediate health concerns first." He approached Emma, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Hello there, I'm Dr. Cooper. I just want to make sure you're healthy. Is that all right?" Emma looked to Olivia, who nodded slightly. The doctor's examination was gentle and thorough, checking Emma's temperature, listening to her breathing, examining her eyes and throat. To Olivia's surprise, Emma answered his quiet questions, breaking her days-long silence. "You've been having bad dreams." The doctor's voice was kind without condescension. Emma nodded. "About the shadow hunter. He wants me to follow him into the dark places." Dr. Cooper's hands paused momentarily in their examination, his eyes flicking up to meet Olivia's. Recognition flickered there. He knew the old stories. "That's quite common after losing someone we love," he said carefully. "Our minds try to make sense of big feelings by turning them into something we can see or touch." While the doctor continued his examination, Ms. Foster pulled Olivia aside, lowering her voice. "This situation is untenable. 2 children cannot live alone in the wilderness, especially with winter approaching. I'll be recommending immediate placement for both of you in appropriate foster homes. The words struck Olivia like physical blows. Foster homes, separation, being taken from the mountain, her home, her inheritance, the only place she truly belonged. No, she said, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. This is our home. I've survived here alone for 2 years. I can take care of Emma. 2 years? Mr. Foster's eyebrows rose. You expect me to believe a 7-year-old child survived alone in these mountains? Believe what you want. It's the truth. The social worker's expression hardened. This isn't about your capabilities, impressive as they may be. It's about what's legal and what's in Emma's best interest. From across the room, Emma's voice rose suddenly clear and firm. I want to stay with Olivia. Mama said we belong here. Miss Foster's professional mask slipped again, genuine concern showing through. Sweetheart, I understand you're scared. Losing your mother and being in a strange place, that's a lot for anyone, especially someone your age. But there are families who can provide proper care with warm houses and good schools and... No, Emma clutched Rabbit tighter. The shadow hunter will find me if I leave the mountain. Mama said Olivia would protect me. Ms. Foster's mouth opened and closed, clearly unprepared for this response. Dr. Cooper finished his examination and approached them, his expression thoughtful. Physically, she's in good health. Well-nourished, no signs of illness or injury. He glanced back at Emma. But the traumatic loss of her mother combined with isolation and these apparent night terrors, she needs stability and proper psychological support. Before either adult could continue, a knock at the door interrupted them. Mr. Morris stood on the threshold, his weathered face calm, but his eyes sharp with purpose. I thought I might find you here, Miss Foster. He nodded to Dr. Cooper. Doctor. Miss Foster's expression tightened. Mr. Morris, your delay in reporting Sarah Bennett's death in the children's situation was highly irregular and potentially dangerous. Mountain ways, he replied, simply stepping into the cabin without waiting for invitation. I was giving them time to honor their dead and establish their household before outsiders intervened. Their household. Mrs. Foster's voice rose slightly. These are children. Children who are blood kin with a legal document naming the elder as guardian. Mr. Morris's voice remained steady. Mountain families have been recognizing such arrangements for generations. I've already explained that a handwritten note doesn't, which is why I've taken the liberty of filing an emergency petition with Judge Lancaster. Mr. Morris produced an official-looking document from inside his coat, requesting a 30-day evaluation period before any removal decisions are made. Mrs. Foster took the paper, scanning it with increasing indignation. This is highly irregular. Judge Lancaster can't possibly have... He has, Mr. Morris interrupted. The judge remembers James Reed and respects mountain traditions. He's granted a 30-day assessment period, during which time the children remain here under community supervision. The social worker's face flushed with frustration. Community supervision. We're 10 miles from the nearest neighbor. I'll be checking in daily, Dr. Cooper interjected, surprising everyone, to monitor Emma's physical and emotional well-being. And I believe Abigail Wells has offered to provide educational support. Mr. Morris nodded. 3 times weekly, and I'll ensure regular deliveries of supplies and maintain communication systems. He gestured to the radio he'd provided earlier. Ms. Foster looked from face to face, clearly realizing she was outnumbered. This is against my professional recommendation, she said finally, but I'll respect the judge's order for now. I'll be filing a formal assessment at the end of 30 days, and if there's any indication of neglect or endangerment, I'll pursue immediate removal. She turned to Olivia, her expression severe but not unkind. I understand you believe you're doing what's best, but children need proper homes, education, health care, things a 9-year-old simply cannot provide, regardless of how capable she may be. After the visitors departed, Olivia stood at the window watching them descend the mountain path, Ms. Foster leading with stiff-backed disapproval, Dr. Cooper, and Mr. Morris following at a more measured pace, deep in conversation. Are they going to take us away? Emma's small voice came from behind her. Olivia turned, unsure how to answer truthfully without frightening the child further. Not today, and not if I can help it. Mr. Morris won't let them, Emma said with surprising confidence. He knows about the shadow hunter. Knows we're safer here with the protection marks. The simple faith in her voice made Olivia's chest ache. Emma trusted her completely, this child who had lost everything else, and the weight of that trust was both terrifying and strangely empowering. We need to be smart, Olivia said, kneeling to Emma's level. Show them we can live well here. That means learning things, not just mountain ways, but the things they teach in villages too. Amma nodded solemnly. Reading and numbers. Mama started teaching me. Then we'll continue. Olivia promised, though her own education had been focused more on survival than academics. And we'll make this place better, safer. The next morning broke clear and cold, perfect for the task Olivia had planned. She spread Sarah's journal open on the table, carefully studying the map drawn on its final pages. It showed the mountain's eastern face with a series of cave markings, one circled in red ink with a note beside it, sanctuary stone door. Use both keys. We're going to find the cave your mother mentioned, she told Emma as they dressed in their warmest clothes. The safe place, Emma's eyes widened. Where we go if the shadow hunter comes? Or if anyone comes that wants to take you away, Olivia added, checking that her knife was secure in its sheath. But we need to find it first, make sure it's really safe. They set out after breakfast, following the path marked on Sarah's map. The journey was slower than Olivia anticipated. Emma's small legs struggled with the deep snow and uneven terrain. But the child showed remarkable determination, pushing forward without complaint, even when Olivia could see she was tiring. The mountain speaks louder today, Emma commented as they paused to rest on a fallen log. What's it saying? Olivia had grown less skeptical of Emma's unusual perceptions, especially after the girl had accurately predicted their visitors the day before. It's warning us. Emma's eyes scanned the forest around them. Something is following our tracks. Olivia turned sharply, studying the path they'd created through the snow. Nothing moved among the trees yet. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. We should keep moving. The cave should be just ahead. According to Sarah's map, the sanctuary cave was hidden behind a seasonal waterfall that froze in winter, creating a crystalline curtain over its entrance. As they approached the location, the frozen cascade came into view, a spectacular formation of ice that caught the midday sun and scattered it into rainbow fragments. It's beautiful, Emma breathed momentarily, forgetting her fatigue. Olivia studied the ice formation with more practical concerns. We need to find a way around it to the cave entrance behind. They circled the frozen waterfall, discovering a narrow ledge that led behind the ice curtain. Olivia went first, testing each step carefully before allowing Emma to follow. Behind the ice, a dark opening yawned and the rock faced the cave entrance. Stay close, Olivia whispered, her voice automatically lowering in the presence of the mountain's shadowed maw. She pulled a small lantern from her pack, lighting it to illuminate their way. The cave entrance widened into a tunnel that stretched deeper into the mountain. The air inside was surprisingly warm compared to the winter chill outside, and dry rather than damp. Olivia held the lantern higher, revealing smooth walls that couldn't be natural. They had been worked by human hands. Someone made this, she murmured, running her fingers over the polished stone. Emma pressed close to her side, eyes wide as she took in their surroundings. The old mountain people, before the towns came. The tunnel continued for perhaps 50 yards before ending at a circular chamber with a stone door set into its far wall. The door was unlike anything Olivia had seen before, perfectly round, with intricate symbols carved into its surface in concentric circles. In the center of the door were two keyholes, one above the other. Use both keys, Olivia remembered Sarah's note. But what keys? Emma reached for her mother's locket, holding it up to the lantern light. This is one. Mama said it would keep her close to my heart, but it's shaped funny for a locket. Examining it more closely, Olivia saw that Emma was right. The silver pendant wasn't a typical locket shape, but rather a complex geometric form with one end that could indeed serve as a key. That's one, but where's the other? They searched the chamber, carefully running their hands over the walls, checking crevices and shadows. Nothing. Maybe it's back at the cabin, Emma suggested. In Mama's things. Olivia frowned, trying to recall if she'd seen anything key-like among Sarah's few possessions. We should head back. It'll be dark soon, and... A sound from the tunnel behind them cut her off, a scraping noise like something heavy being dragged across stone. Both girls froze, eyes fixed on the dark passage they'd just traversed. Someone's coming, Emma whispered, clutching Olivia's hand. Olivia extinguished the lantern, immediately plunging them into darkness. Stay quiet, she breathed into Emma's ear, pulling them both into a shadowed alcove in the chamber wall. The scraping grew louder, accompanied now by a rhythmic sound, not quite footsteps, but something moving with purpose. A faint glow appeared in the tunnel, growing stronger as whatever created it approached the chamber. Emma buried her face against Olivia's side, trembling but making no sound. Olivia wrapped her arm protectively around the younger girl, her free hand finding the knife at her belt. The glow reached the chamber entrance, illuminating the space with an unnatural bluish light. And then the source entered, a figure that made Olivia's blood run cold. It was impossibly tall and thin, its limbs elongated beyond human proportion. It moved with a jerking, unnatural gait, as if its joints bent in ways they shouldn't. Where its face should have been was only darkness, with 2 points of cold light serving as eyes. The Shadow Hunter, not glimpsed at a distance through trees or in dreams, but here mere yards away. Olivia's fingers tightened around her knife, though instinct told her the blade would be useless against this entity. The hunter paused in the center of the chamber, its head swiveling as if scenting the air. Then it turned directly toward their hiding place. I know you are here, little flame. It spoke, its voice like dry leaves rustling over stone. I can taste your grief, rich and sweet. Emma trembled against Olivia, but remarkably didn't cry out. Instead, she raised her head, eyes focusing on the creature with a mixture of fear and defiance. Your mother is lost to you, the hunter continued, taking a gliding step toward their alcove. But I can take you to a place where pain cannot follow, where memories of loss fade like morning mist. Don't listen, Olivia whispered so softly even she barely heard it. But Emma squeezed her hand in response. She understood. The creature took another step now, close enough that Olivia could feel an unnatural cold emanating from it, like standing before an open freezer. The mountain has already claimed your mother. It will claim the other girl too in time. All who dwell here eventually feed the darkness beneath. Something about its words struck a chord of recognition in Olivia. Grandfather had spoken of the mountain demanding respect, sometimes sacrifice. But he'd also taught her that those who understood its ways could live in harmony with its power, rather than falling victim to it. The mountain protects its own, she whispered, repeating Mr. Morris's words from days earlier. At her words, the symbols on the stone door began to glow faintly, the same protective marks that surrounded their cabin. The hunter hissed, drawing back slightly. You are not protected here, it insisted, though its voice held less certainty now. This chamber belongs to the deep dark, to those who dwell beneath. No, Emma's voice rang out suddenly, clear and unafraid. It belongs to the Flame Keepers. My mama was one, and so am I. She stepped forward out of Olivia's protective embrace and held up the locket. In the dim light cast by the glowing door symbols, the silver pendant seemed to catch and amplify the illumination, shining like a miniature star. The hunter recoiled, raising one elongated arm as if to shield itself. The key, it hissed. Where did you get the keeper's key? Emma didn't answer, continuing to hold the locket high. The creature retreated another step, then another, its form seeming to lose substance around the edges, darkness bleeding into the surrounding shadows. This isn't over, little flame, it promised, its voice fading with its form. The mountain will surrender what belongs to the deep dark. It always does. And then it was gone, leaving the chamber in darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the door symbols, which themselves began to fade. Olivia fumbled with the lantern, relighting it with shaking hands. Emma stood where the hunter had been, locket still extended, her small face set in determination. You were so brave. Olivia breathed, awe and residual fear mingling in her voice. Emma lowered her arms, slowly turning to face Olivia. It was scared of the key, and of you saying the mountain protects its own. We need to find the second key, Olivia decided, gathering their belongings. But not today. We should get back to the cabin before dark. As they made their way out of the cave and into the fading afternoon light, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed some threshold, not just physically, but in their understanding of the forces at work on the mountain. The hunter was real, not just a story to frighten children. And if it was real, then perhaps the Flamekeeper was too. The journey back to the cabin was tense, both girls constantly looking over their shoulders, starting at every shadow. But nothing followed them, at least nothing they could see. As they crested the final ridge before the cabin, Emma suddenly stopped, pointing to their home in the distance. Someone's been there. Olivia followed her gaze, seeing nothing unusual at first. Then she noticed that the cabin door stood slightly ajar, though she was certain she had secured it before they left. "Stay here," she instructed, drawing her knife. "If you hear me call, run back to the village. Find Mr. Morris." "I'm not leaving you," Emma declared, gripping Olivia's free hand. There was no time to argue. Whoever had entered their home might still be inside, and the approaching dusk would soon make the forest path treacherous. Together they approached the cabin cautiously, Olivia keeping Emma behind her as they drew near. The interior looked undisturbed at first glance, fire-banked as they'd left it, dishes still stacked. From breakfast, sleeping furs neatly arranged. But then Olivia noticed the wooden box beside her bed had been moved, its lid not quite closed. "They went through our things," she whispered, checking the box's contents. Sarah's journal was still there, as was the will and the map they'd used that morning. Nothing seemed to be missing, but the items had clearly been examined and hastily replaced. "Look," Emma pointed to a small object on the table that definitely hadn't been there when they left. A key, old and iron, with a design that matched the geometric patterns of Emma's locket. Beside it lay a note written in an elegant hand. "The hunter has found her. Use the sanctuary when the shadows lengthen. R. R." Olivia turned the note over, finding nothing else. "Richard, your father." Emma backed away from the table, shaking her head. "He wouldn't help us. He wants to give me to the hunter." "Then who?" A sound outside interrupted her, footsteps crunching in the snow, approaching the cabin. Olivia grabbed the key and pulled Emma into the corner furthest from the door, positioning herself protectively in front. The door swung open to reveal Ms. Foster, clipboard in hand, expression shifting from professional detachment to alarm as she took in the scene before her, two frightened girls huddled in the corner, one wielding a knife. "What on earth?" The social worker stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Olivia put that down immediately. "What's happened here?" Olivia lowered the knife but didn't sheath it. "Someone was in our cabin. They went through our things." Ms. Foster glanced around, noting the disturbed box. "I see. And did they take anything?" "No, they left something." Olivia held up the key but kept the note hidden in her palm. Something told her the social worker wouldn't respond well to mysterious messages about shadow creatures. "A key?" Ms. Foster's brow furrowed. "To what?" "We don't know yet," Olivia lied smoothly. "Probably to one of the storage sheds outside." The social worker didn't look convinced, but she moved on, retrieving her clipboard. "I've come to conduct an initial assessment of your living conditions, as agreed with Judge Lancaster. I'll need to inspect the entire premises and ask both of you some questions." The inspection was thorough and uncomfortable. So Foster examined every corner of the cabin, taking notes and occasionally asking pointed questions about their daily routines, food supplies, and sleeping arrangements. "One room is completely inadequate for long-term habitation," she declared, making another note, "especially for two children of different ages. There are privacy concerns that will become more significant as you both grow older. We can build an addition." Olivia suggested, the idea forming even as she spoke it. "Grandfather taught me basic construction, and the village would help." Ms. Foster looked skeptical but made a note. "And your educational arrangements, Emma should be in kindergarten and you in fourth grade." "Miss Wells is coming 3 times a week," Olivia reminded her. "And we have books." "Books don't constitute a curriculum," Ms. Foster countered. "And what about social development? Children need interaction with peers, not just adults." The questioning continued until Emma, overwhelmed by the day's events, began to nod off where she sat. Even Ms. Foster recognized the child's exhaustion and brought her assessment to a close. "I'll be submitting an interim report," she informed Olivia as she prepared to leave. "For now, the arrangement stands, but there are serious concerns that need to be addressed before I can recommend permanent guardianship." After the social worker departed, Olivia secured the cabin more thoroughly than before, checking and reinforcing each protective symbol, barricading the door and windows. Only then did she turn her attention to the mysterious key and note. "Who do you think R is?" she asked Emma, who was fighting sleep at the table. "Don't know," the child mumbled, eyes half closed. "But they know about the hunter and the sanctuary." Olivia studied the iron key alongside Emma's silver locket. Together, they would open the stone door in the cave, the sanctuary Sarah had wanted them to find. But why would someone break into their cabin to ensure they had both keys? And how had they known about Emma and the hunter? Too many questions with no clear answers. But one thing was certain. The mountain held more secrets than either of them had imagined, and those secrets were somehow tied to their shared bloodline. Time for sleep, Olivia decided, helping Emma to her bed of furs. Tomorrow we'll think more about this. But sleep brought no peace that night. Emma's nightmares returned worse than before, her small body thrashing beneath the covers as she cried out about shadows and flames. Olivia held her through the worst of it, whispering reassurances, though she had no idea if her words reached through the terror. Near dawn, Emma finally settled into deeper sleep. Olivia, exhausted but too anxious to rest, moved to the window to watch the sunrise. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when she spotted something moving at the forest edge. A figure that was neither the unnaturally elongated shadow hunter nor a normal human. It was a woman, or the suggestion of one, translucent, with edges that blurred into the morning mist. She stood at the exact spot where the protective boundary around the cabin began, one hand extended as if testing an invisible barrier. As Olivia watched the figure turn toward the cabin, her features indistinct except for her eyes, which even at this distance seemed to hold a familiar warmth. The ghostly woman raised her hand in what might have been a greeting or a warning, then dissolved as the first ray of sunlight broke over the eastern ridge. Olivia blinked, wondering if exhaustion had caused her to hallucinate, but a certainty settled in her chest as solid and real as the mountain beneath the cabin. She had seen the Flamekeeper. Sarah's spirit, perhaps, or something that had taken her form to communicate with them. Either way, the message seemed clear. Danger was approaching, and they needed to prepare. The mountain protected its own, but sometimes its own needed to fight back as well. The first frost came early that year, painting the ground with delicate silver patterns that crunched under Olivia's boots as she inspected her garden. The mountain always gave fair warning before winter's full assault, and she'd learned to read its signs: migrating birds flying in tighter formations, squirrels frantically gathering final stores, the distinct scent of snow on the wind weeks before the first flakes fell. Winter comes early this year, she told Emma as they harvested the last of the root vegetables. We need to prepare. Emma nodded solemnly, her small hands carefully placing potatoes in the woven basket. 2 months had passed since Sarah's death, and the changes in both girls were evident. Emma's nightmares had decreased in frequency, though they still came when shadows lengthened and the wind howled through the pines. Olivia had grown more confident in her role as guardian, establishing routines that blended survival necessities with the educational requirements Ms. Foster insisted upon. What happens in winter? Emma asked, brushing dirt from a particularly large potato. Olivia considered how to explain mountain winters to a child who had only known village life. Snow deeper than you are tall, days so cold your breath freezes, nights when the stars seem close enough to touch. She paused, noting Emma's widening eyes. But inside will be warm, safe. The following days took on new urgency. Olivia doubled her hunting efforts, bringing home rabbits, a young deer, and even a wild turkey. Emma watched with solemn curiosity as she demonstrated how to smoke meat on racks above carefully tended fires, explaining how preservation would carry them through months when fresh game grew scarce. Your job is berries, Olivia explained, showing Emma how to sort the last of the season's blueberries and blackberries for drying. The younger girl's fingers worked with surprising dexterity, separating overripe from perfect with careful attention. As they worked side by side in companionable silence, Olivia found herself studying Emma's worn clothing with growing concern. Her dress, already too thin when they had arrived, had been mended multiple times. Her shoes, little more than cloth slippers, would never withstand snow. We need to visit the village, she decided aloud. Emma's head snapped up, alarm clear in her eyes. I don't want to leave the mountain. Not to stay, Olivia assured her, to trade for winter things. The journey to the village took most of the morning, Emma's small legs slowing their usual pace. Olivia carried a pack laden with furs and smoked meat, valuable currency in the barter economy of mountain communities. As they descended into the valley, she felt Emma's hand slip into hers, a rare gesture of trust that tightened something in her chest. The village was little more than a cluster of cabins and a single trading post, but to a child who had only known their isolated mountainside for months, it clearly felt overwhelming. Emma pressed against Olivia's leg as curious eyes turned their way. Mountain ghost brings a little ghost now, one woman whispered to another as they passed. Inside the trading post, Olivia spread her offerings before the shopkeeper, primed for specialty smoked meats and medicinal herbs she'd gathered using Sarah's journal as a guide. The man nodded appreciatively, examining her work with expert hands. Good haul for one so young, he acknowledged. What do you need? Olivia gestured toward Emma. Winter gear for her, and supplies. The shopkeeper's wife appeared from the back room, her eyes softening at the sight of the small girl. Sarah Bennett's child, she said quietly. We heard. She knelt before Emma. Let's find you proper boots, shall we? While the woman helped Emma try on sturdy leather boots lined with rabbit fur, Olivia selected other necessities: thick woolen stockings, a heavy coat, mittens, and a knitted cap. The cost far exceeded her usual trading, requiring nearly everything she'd brought. Add these, the shopkeeper's wife said, placing a bundle of girls' dresses and undergarments on the counter. When Olivia began to protest the cost now well beyond her means, she shook her head firmly. No charge for these. Sarah helped my mother in her final days. We pay our debts. The walk home felt lighter despite their packs. Emma stomped in her new boots, watching with delight as they left clear prints in the muddy path. Halfway up the mountain, they encountered the season's first snowflakes, just a few dancing specks that melted upon landing. It's like stars falling, Emma whispered, tilting her face skyward. As they neared the cabin, Olivia noticed something was off. The door stood slightly ajar, though she was certain she had secured it before they left. She motioned for Emma to stay back, reaching for the knife at her belt. Wait here, she murmured. If I call, run to the big oak and hide. Emma nodded, clutching her package of new clothes to her chest, eyes wide with sudden fear. Olivia approached the cabin cautiously, knife ready. Through the partially open door, she could hear movement inside, not the unnatural silence of the shadow hunter, but human sounds. Footsteps, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of papers. She pushed the door open in one swift movement, knife raised, and found herself face to face with Miss Abigail Wells, the village teacher who had been coming 3 times weekly for their lessons. Goodness, Miss Wells startled, nearly dropping the book she was holding. You move like a cat, Olivia. Relief flooded through Olivia, though confusion quickly followed. Our lesson isn't until tomorrow. I know, dear. Miss Wells placed the book on the table alongside several others she'd apparently brought. But the first snow is coming tonight, a real one, not just flurries. I wanted to make sure you had extra reading material for when you're snowed in. Olivia lowered her knife, calling to Emma that it was safe. As she helped the younger girl inside with their purchases, Miss Wells surveyed their preparations with an appraising eye. You've done remarkably well, she noted, examining the stores of dried fruits and smoked meat. Better than most adults I know would manage. Grandfather taught me everything, Olivia replied, still slightly defensive. Every adult visitor seemed to be evaluating them, judging their fitness to remain on the mountain. Not everything, Miss Wells corrected gently. He couldn't have taught you how to care for a younger child, that you've figured out on your own. The observation caught Olivia off guard. She hadn't thought about it that way, how much of her current life was uncharted territory, with no grandfather's lessons to guide her. Miss Foster is still concerned. Miss Wells continued, helping Emma arrange her new clothes in the small chest they used for storage. She believes children should be with adults in proper houses with electricity and running water. This is a proper house, Emma insisted, surprising both of them with her vehemence. It has everything we need. Miss Wells smiled at the child's defense. I know, dear, and I've told Miss Foster as much. But, she hesitated, glancing at Olivia. There are concerns about space. 1 room for 2 growing girls. We can build more rooms, Olivia said, the idea crystallizing as she spoke. Grandfather showed me how. We just need lumber and tools. That would certainly help your case, Miss Wells agreed. The hearing is in 3 weeks. Judge Lancaster will want to see progress. After the teacher departed, promising to return, if the weather permitted, Olivia and Emma sat by the fire planning their expansion. Emma's drawings were elaborate, a room of her own, with a window facing the sunrise shelves for books and space for a larger bed. It needs to be practical, Olivia cautioned, though she couldn't help smiling at the child's enthusiasm. We build for warmth and safety first. Pretty things come later. That night, as the first serious snowfall of the season blanketed the mountain, they sat examining the 2 keys that would unlock the sanctuary cave. The silver locket and the iron key, so different in appearance yet designed to work together. Should we try them tomorrow? Emma asked, turning the iron key in her small hands. To make sure the door opens? Olivia considered this, weighing curiosity against caution. Soon, But first we need to understand more about what the sanctuary is and who left us the second key. The mysterious R from the note troubled her. If not Richard Bennett, then who? Someone who knew about the hunter, about Emma's connection to it, and about the sanctuary cave. Someone who had access to their cabin without triggering the protective symbols. Read more from your mother's journal, she suggested. Maybe there are clues we missed. Emma retrieved the worn leather book, handling it with reverence. Though she was still learning to read, she'd memorized many passages from listening to Olivia read them aloud. She turned to the final pages where the map and notes about the sanctuary were recorded. There's something here, she said, suddenly pointing to what looked like random pen marks in the margin. It doesn't make sense. Olivia examined the markings. What had seemed like doodles or accidental ink marks now appeared to be a simple substitution code. Each symbol corresponded to a letter, creating a message hidden in plain sight. It's a message, Olivia realized quickly, working out the pattern. It says, R is watching. Trust only the flame. R again, Imoa whispered, clutching the locket. Who is R? Before Olivia could respond, a sound outside caught their attention. Not the howling wind or creaking trees, but a distinctive 3 knocks on the cabin door. The pattern Mr. Morris used. Olivia opened the door to find the village elder standing in swirling snow, his beard and eyebrows already white with accumulated flakes. May I enter? He asked, stamping his boots on the threshold. Once inside, he produced a small package from inside his coat. From Dr. Cooper, medicine for winter colds and minor injuries. Thank you. Olivia accepted the package, noting it was heavier than it appeared. There's more, Mr. Morris said, lowering his voice, though they were alone in the cabin. Talk in the village. Richard Bennett has been seen in the county, asking questions about his daughter. Emma, who had been arranging her new boots by the door, froze at the mention of her father's name. Her fingers instinctively went to her locket. He can't take her, Olivia stated, moving protectively closer to Emma. Sarah's will is being challenged, Mr. Morris interrupted grimly. Richard has filed papers claiming Sarah was mentally unstable when she wrote it, that she'd developed paranoid delusions about him due to her illness. The implications settled heavily in the small cabin. If a judge believed Richard's claims, the will would be invalidated. Emma could be returned to her father regardless of Sarah's wishes or the girl's desires. When Olivia demanded, her mind already calculating options, escape routes, supplies they'd need. Hearing still set for 3 weeks from now. Judge Lancaster is fair, he'll listen to all sides. But Richard has money for lawyers, and he's Emma's father by blood. Blood isn't always family, Emma said suddenly, echoing words her mother must have spoken. He wants to give me to the shadow hunter. Mr. Morris's weathered face grew grave. You've seen it then, the hunter. Both girls nodded solemnly. It came to the sanctuary cave, Olivia explained, when we went to find it. Did you open the door? No, we have both keys, but we didn't know if it was safe. The elder seemed relieved by this. Good. The sanctuary is meant for dire need only. Opening the door, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. It changes things. On the mountain. Olivia wanted to press for more information, but Mr. Morris raised his hand, signaling he'd said all he intended to on the matter. Build your addition, he advised instead. Show Ms. Foster and the judge you're creating a proper home. I'll bring men from the village to help when the snow clears. After ensuring they had enough firewood and other supplies to last through the coming storm, Mr. Morris departed, leaving the girls with more questions than answers. That night, as wind howled around the cabin corners and snow accumulated against the windows, Olivia found sleep elusive. Every creak of the roof, every whistle of wind through the pines seemed like a warning or a threat. Dawn revealed a transformed world, pristine white, stretching as far as the eye could see, familiar landmarks rendered unrecognizable beneath their snowy blankets. The storm had dropped nearly 2 feet of snow overnight, effectively isolating them from the village below. Snow day, Emma announced with unexpected delight as she pressed her face to the frosted window glass. No lessons today. Her childish joy at the reprieve was contagious, momentarily lifting the weight of yesterday's revelations. But still chores. Olivia reminded her, stoking the fire higher than usual to combat the increased cold. They spent the morning clearing paths to the woodshed and outhouse, working together to move the heavy snow. By midday, they were red-cheeked and exhausted, but satisfied with their progress. As Emma helped prepare their meal, something about the previous night's conversation with Mr. Morris kept nagging at Olivia. The sanctuary changes things, he'd said. What thing and how, Emma? She began carefully watching the younger girl slice dried apples for their stew. Did your mother ever talk about the sanctuary, about what it's for? Emma's brow furrowed in concentration. She said it was a safe place, that the flame keepers built it long ago to hide from the shadow hunter. But did she say what it's inside it, behind the stone door? The child shook her head. Just that we'd be protected there, that the hunter can't follow. Protection was certainly valuable, especially with Richard Bennett seeking custody, but Olivia sensed there was more to it. Why else would the mysterious R break into their cabin to ensure they had both keys? Why would Mr. Morris seem relieved they hadn't opened the door? The answer came 3 days later, when the snow had settled enough for them to venture beyond the immediate surroundings of the cabin. They were checking snare lines when Emma suddenly stopped, head tilting in that now familiar way that indicated she was hearing something Olivia couldn't. Someone's hurt, she announced, changing direction and heading deeper into the forest. Olivia hurried after her. Emma, wait! How do you know? The mountain told me. Emma's pace didn't slow, her small form navigating between snow-laden pines with surprising agility. This way! They emerged into a small clearing to find a man lying half buried in snow, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. His face was pale with cold, and pain, eyes closed, but his chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Olivia approached cautiously, immediately noting that this was no villager. His clothes were too fine, his boots too new. A city man who had no business being on the mountain in winter. He's still alive, she confirmed, checking his pulse as grandfather had taught her. But barely. We need to get him warm. Together they constructed a makeshift sled from pine boughs, securing the unconscious man upon it with strips of cloth from Olivia's pack. The journey back to the cabin was arduous, both girls straining against the weight as they dragged their burden through deep snow. By the time they reached the cabin, Olivia's arms trembled with exhaustion. They managed to get the man inside and onto her sleeping furs near the fire. Only then could they examine him properly, a man in his 40s, well-dressed despite his disheveled state, with features that seemed vaguely familiar, though Olivia couldn't place him. His leg is broken, she determined, carefully cutting away his pant leg to reveal a compound fracture. And he has frostbite on his fingers and ears. We should call Dr. Cooper on the radio, Emma suggested, already moving toward the device Mr. Morris had left them. Olivia nodded, turning back to their patient, and found herself staring into open eyes. The man was conscious, watching her with an intensity that made her instinctively reach for her knife. Don't be afraid, he rasped, voice weak from exposure. I'm not here to hurt you. Who are you? Olivia demanded, keeping her distance. Why are you on our mountain in winter? The man attempted to sit up, wincing as the movement jarred his broken leg. My name is Robert Bennett. I believe you've been caring for my niece. Bennett. The name hit Olivia like a physical blow. This man was related to Richard, to Emma, but how Sarah had never mentioned a brother-in-law. Emma, she called, not taking her eyes off the stranger. Come here. Emma approached slowly, eyes widening, as she saw the man was awake. She stopped just behind Olivia, peering around her protectively positioned arm. Hello, Emma, the man said gently. You've grown since I last saw you. You look like your mother. Emma's grip tightened on Olivia's sleeve. I don't know you. No, you wouldn't remember. You were just a baby. He coughed, the sound rattling ominously in his chest. I'm your father's brother, your uncle. Olivia breathed, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. You left the second key. Robert nodded, grimacing as another wave of pain washed over him. I've been watching, making sure you were safe. Safe from what? Olivia pressed. The shadow hunter? Or your brother, both? His gaze moved to Emma, who still clutched Olivia's sleeve. My brother is not well, hasn't been for many years. He believes in the old mountain legends, but misunderstands them, twists them. Dr. Cooper's voice crackled over the radio, responding to Emma's call. Olivia quickly explained the situation: injured man, broken leg exposure, carefully omitting any mention of his identity. The doctor promised to come as soon as he could safely make the journey up the mountain, likely the next day if conditions improved. After signing off, Olivia turned back to their unexpected guest. You should rest, save your strength. But Robert seemed determined to speak while he was lucid. The sanctuary, he managed, voice weakening. Has Sarah told you what it truly is? Emma shook her head. Just that it's safe from the hunter. It's more than that. It's a gateway. His eyes drifted closed momentarily before he forced them open again. The mountain has passages, places where the veil is thin between worlds. Olivia exchanged glances with Emma, uncertainty evident in both their expressions. This talk of veils and worlds sounded like fever-induced rambling. You need to rest, she repeated more firmly, pulling a blanket higher over his shivering form. We can talk when you are stronger. The next 24 hours were tense. Robert drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid and calm, other times delirious, speaking to people who weren't there, warning about shadows and flames and doors that should remain closed. Emma refused to leave Olivia's side, watching their visitor with wary fascination. When Dr. Cooper finally arrived the following afternoon, Robert was in the midst of another fevered episode, muttering about keeping the balance and the price of passage. The doctor worked quickly, setting the broken leg and treating the frostbite with salves from his bag. He's developing pneumonia, he informed Olivia after a thorough examination. I've given him antibiotics, but he needs a hospital. Is it safe to move him? Dr. Cooper shook his head. Not yet. The leg needs to stabilize first, and the pass is still too dangerous. He packed his supplies, preparing to leave. I'll come back tomorrow. Keep him warm, try to get fluids into him when he's conscious. After the doctor left, Olivia studied their patient with renewed concern. If he truly was Emma's uncle, his presence complicated an already precarious situation. Would he support Richard's custody claim? Or was he here to help them fight it? Do you recognize him at all? She asked Emma, who was preparing a broth under Olivia's guidance. The child considered this, stirring the pot with careful concentration. His eyes, she said finally, they look like mine and Mama's. It was true, Olivia realized. Robert had the same unusual amber eyes as Emma and Sarah, a family trait perhaps that had skipped Richard. That evening, Robert woke more lucid than before, accepting the broth Emma offered with shaking hands. Thank you, he managed between sips. Both of you, for saving me. Why were you on the mountain? Olivia asked, determined to get answers while he was coherent. The truth. Robert sighed, settling the empty bowl aside. I came to warn you. Richard knows about the sanctuary. He plans to use it at the new moon 3 nights from now. Use it how? Olivia pressed. The sanctuary isn't just a safe place. It's a doorway to the deep places beneath the mountain. Places of power. His voice dropped lower. Richard believes he can harness that power through Emma, her connection to the mountain spirits. Emma's small face paled. He wants to give me to the shadow hunter. In a way, Robert's expression was grim. He believes he can control the hunter, use its power for himself. But the hunter controls those who seek to use it. Always. The implications were chilling. Richard wasn't just seeking custody of his daughter. He was planning to use her in some dark ritual, believing her innate connection to the mountain would give him access to supernatural power. How do you know all this? Olivia demanded, suspicion flaring. If you're his brother. Because I was once like him, Robert admitted, shame evident in his voice. The Bennett family has always been drawn to the mountain's secrets. Our grandmother, your grandfather's sister, he nodded to Olivia, taught us the old ways, but Richard went deeper into the shadows than I ever dared. He shifted, wincing as the movement jarred his broken leg. I've spent years trying to undo the damage I helped cause. When Sarah fled with Emma, I helped hide them, kept watch from a distance. You're the one who told her about me, Olivia realized. About the mountain ghost. Robert nodded. I knew your grandfather, respected him. When I learned his granddaughter had survived alone on the mountain, I thought, perhaps the bloodlines were meant to reunite. Mountain blood is strong in both of you. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying the promise of another storm. What do we do? Emma asked, her voice small but steady. If my father is coming. Robert reached for the silver locket around Emma's neck, examining it with reverence. The sanctuary must be opened before Richard attempts to use it, by those with the right intention, by flame keepers. But Mr. Morris said opening the door changes things on the mountain, Olivia countered, that it's only for dire need. This is dire need, Robert insisted. The balance must be maintained. Light and shadow above and below. He looked directly at Emma. Your mother was a keeper. The power passed to you. Emma clutched her locket, uncertainty evident in her young face. I don't know how to be a keeper. The mountain will guide you, Robert had assured him. It already speaks to you, doesn't it? Warning of storms, showing you where to find what you need. The child nodded slowly. Then you already know more than you think. His gaze shifted to Olivia. And you, with your grandfather's blood, have kept the protections alive without even understanding their purpose. Together you can open the sanctuary, claim it, before Richard corrupts it. Olivia wasn't convinced. This talk of powers and keepers seemed fantastical, the stuff of mountain legends, rather than practical reality. Yet she couldn't deny the evidence of her own experiences. The shadow hunter's very real presence, Emma's uncanny perceptions, the protective symbols that somehow worked despite her skepticism. We'll think about it, she said, finally unwilling to commit to anything while Robert was still feverish and their understanding incomplete. You should rest now. That night, as their patient slept fitfully by the fire, Olivia and Emma huddled together on the remaining sleeping furs, whispering so as not to be overheard. Do you believe him? Emma asked, her small face serious in the dim light. About my father coming to use the sanctuary. Olivia considered this carefully. I believe he believes it, she said finally. But I'm not sure about opening the door ourselves. It feels dangerous. Everything on the mountain is dangerous, Emma observed with childlike wisdom. That's why we need to understand it, respect it. The simple statement resonated with Olivia. Wasn't that precisely what grandfather had taught her? The mountain wasn't malevolent or benevolent, it simply was. Power that could sustain or destroy depending on how one approached it. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it carefully, with preparation, and we need to know exactly what to expect. They spent the next day questioning Robert whenever he was lucid, piecing together a clearer picture of the sanctuary and its purpose. According to Bennett family lore passed down from their grandmother, the stone door led to a chamber where the boundaries between worlds thinned. There, those with mountain blood could communicate with spirits both benevolent and malicious, the flame keepers and the shadow hunters of legend. The sanctuary itself is neutral ground. Robert explained, his voice stronger after a day of rest and Dr. Cooper's medicine. Neither light nor shadow holds sway there until someone claims it. That's why both keys are needed, silver for light, iron for shadow. Balance. But what happens when we open the door? Olivia pressed. What changes on the mountain? Robert's expression grew solemn. The veil thins everywhere, not just in the sanctuary. Spirits can cross more easily, both kinds. It's why the door is only opened in times of need, when the protection outweighs the risk. Like now, Emma said quietly, because my father is coming. Yes. Robert reached for her hand, his touch gentle. Richard plans to open it at the new moon when the hunter's power is strongest. We must do it first, establish the keeper's claim. The plan was risky, based on legends and family lore rather than certainty. Yet as the day progressed, Olivia found herself increasingly convinced it was their only option. If Richard truly was coming to use Emma in some dark ritual, they needed every protection available, natural and supernatural. Dr. Cooper's return that afternoon brought unexpected news that cemented their decision. After checking Robert's condition, the doctor pulled Olivia aside, his expression grave. There's a man in the village asking about you and Emma, he murmured. Well-dressed city type, claiming to be Emma's father. Olivia's blood ran cold. Richard Bennett, the doctor nodded. He's staying at the inn, says he's waiting for the weather to clear so he can come up the mountain. Has papers, court orders, custody documents. They're not valid, Olivia insisted. Sarah's will is being challenged, yes, Mr. Morris told me. Dr. Cooper glanced toward Emma, who was helping Robert with his medicine. The hearing isn't for 2 more weeks, but Bennett seems impatient. New moon, Olivia whispered, 3 nights from now. The doctor looked confused by this non sequitur, but continued. Morris is stalling him, saying the path is too dangerous. But if the weather clears... Thank you for the warning, Olivia said, her decision crystallizing. We'll be ready. After Dr. Cooper departed, they began preparations in earnest. According to Robert, the sanctuary ritual required specific elements. Mountain water from the spring, pine resin collected at dawn, stones from the creek bed, and fire carried from their hearth. Most importantly, both keys needed to be cleansed in sacred smoke before they would work properly. Despite his broken leg, Robert directed their efforts showing them how to prepare each element and teaching them the words they would need to speak when opening the door. Emma absorbed everything with solemn attention, practicing the unfamiliar phrases until she could recite them perfectly. The day before the new moon dawned clear and cold, the storm clouds that had protected them finally dispersing. From the cabin window, Olivia could see the village below, smoke rising from chimneys into the crystalline air. Somewhere down there, Richard Bennett was waiting, perhaps already planning his ascent to the mountain. "We go tonight," she decided, watching Emma carefully arrange their ritual items in a deerskin pouch. "Before the new moon, establish our claim first." Robert, propped up against the wall with his splinted leg extended, nodded approval. "The hunter will be weaker tonight. Easier to keep at bay." As dusk approached, Olivia packed their supplies, lantern, food, extra blankets, the ritual items, and both keys. Emma, dressed in her warmest clothes, the silver locket secure around her neck. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked, a rare glimpse of childish uncertainty breaking through her composure. Olivia knelt to her level, adjusting the woolen cap over Emma's ears. "Then we run. We know the mountain better than he does. We can hide until the hearing." "And if it does work, what then?" The question gave Olivia pause. What did working even mean in this context? Protection from Richard, certainly. But Robert had hinted at greater implications, changes to the mountain itself, to their connection with it. "Then we face whatever comes," she said finally, "together." Robert watched them prepare from his position by the fire. "Remember," he called as they reached the door, "both keys turned together. Speak the words exactly as I taught you. And whatever you see on the other side of the door, know that it's only as powerful as you allow it to be." The cryptic warning lingered in Olivia's mind as they made their way through the snowy forest. The nearly full moon cast blue-white light across the landscape, creating stark shadows between the trees. Their breath formed clouds in the frigid air, and their footsteps crunched loudly in the silence. As they approached the frozen waterfall that concealed the cave entrance, Olivia sensed a change in the air, a heaviness, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Emma felt it too, her pace slowing, her hand seeking Olivia's. "He's already here," she whispered, her eyes wide. "Waiting." Olivia scanned the tree line, seeing nothing unusual among the shadows. "Your father, how do you know not him?" Emma pointed toward the ice-covered rocks surrounding the waterfall. "The hunter. It knows what we're going to do." As if in response to her words, a shadow detached itself from the darkness between two pines taller than any human, with limbs that bent at impossible angles. It made no move toward them, simply watching with eyes that reflected the moonlight like a predator's. "It can't stop us," Olivia said with more confidence than she felt. "We have the keys and the right words. We belong to this mountain as much as it does." They approached the frozen cascade, cautiously circling to find the narrow ledge that led behind the ice. The hunter followed their movement, gliding parallel to their path, but maintaining its distance. Behind the curtain of ice, the cave mouth yawned black and uninviting. Olivia lit the lantern, its warm glow creating eerie reflections in the surrounding ice. Together they made their way down the tunnel toward the circular chamber where the stone door waited. The door looked just as it had on their previous visit, perfectly round, covered in concentric rings of symbols, with two keyholes positioned one above the other. What they hadn't noticed before was how the symbols seemed to shift subtly in the lantern light, as if they weren't quite fixed in place. "Ready?" Olivia asked, removing the iron key from her pocket, while Emma unclasped the silver locket from around her neck. The child nodded, her face set in determination beyond her years. Together, they positioned the keys in their respective holes, silver above, iron below, and began to recite the words Robert had taught them. The language was unfamiliar, older than the mountain settlements, with sounds that seemed to vibrate in the chamber's still air. As they spoke, the symbols on the door began to glow, first faintly, then with increasing brightness until they outshone the lantern. A low humming sound filled the chamber, rising in pitch as the final words were spoken. "Now," Olivia whispered, "turn the keys." They twisted the keys simultaneously, feeling resistance at first, then a sudden release as internal mechanisms engaged. The door began to move, rotating slowly inward, like a massive coin on edge, revealing darkness beyond, but not complete darkness. As the opening widened, Olivia could see points of light within, not lanterns or torches, but something like stars suspended in mid-air constellations in impossible configurations. The humming crescendoed to a pitch that was almost painful, then stopped abruptly as the door completed its rotation. In the sudden silence, Emma's intake of breath seemed unnaturally loud. "It's beautiful," she whispered, staring into the chamber beyond. And it was beautiful in a way that defied description. The space before them wasn't a normal cave room, but seemed to extend infinitely, filled with those star-like lights that cast no shadows, yet illuminated a path forward. "We need to enter," Olivia reminded her, recalling Robert's instructions. "Claim the sanctuary before—" A noise from the tunnel behind them cut her off, not the unnatural silence of the hunter, but human sounds. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Emma clutched Olivia's hand, her face pale in the otherworldly light. "He's here," she whispered. "My father." The tunnel behind them filled with approaching footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Olivia pulled Emma closer to the open sanctuary door, positioning herself protectively between the child and whatever was coming. "We have to go in," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now." Three figures emerged into the circular chamber, a tall man in an expensive coat flanked by two burlier companions. His amber eyes, so like Emma's, narrowed as he took in the scene before him. "Emma," Richard Bennett's voice was surprisingly gentle. "It's time to come home with father." Emma shrank against Olivia, fingers gripping the older girl's coat. "This is my home now." Richard's expression hardened, any pretense of gentleness vanishing. "Step away from my daughter," he commanded Olivia. "This doesn't concern you." "She concerns me," Olivia replied, chin raised defiantly despite her racing heart. "And this mountain concerns me. You don't belong here." A cold smile crossed Richard's face as he stepped forward. "I have more right to this place than you know, child. My family has tended these secrets for generations." He gestured to the open sanctuary door. "Including that." One of his companions moved suddenly, lunging toward the girls. Olivia reacted instinctively, pushing Emma through the doorway into the sanctuary while dodging the man's grasp. She tumbled through after Emma, both of them landing on what felt like solid ground despite the Starfield appearance. Richard's shout of rage echoed behind them as the door began to close, not from anyone's action, but of its own accord, as if the sanctuary had recognized its rightful guardians and was sealing itself against intruders. Inside the sanctuary, the star-like lights swirled around them, illuminating a circular chamber unlike anything they'd expected. Instead of a cave, they stood in what appeared to be an observatory of sorts, with a domed ceiling displaying constellations that no human astronomer had ever mapped. "Olivia, look," Emma whispered, pointing to the center of the room. A column of gentle flame rose from a stone pedestal, casting warm light throughout the chamber. As they approached, the flame seemed to respond, brightening and extending tendrils of light toward them, like welcoming arms. The Flamekeeper, not just a legend, but a tangible presence. "What do we do now?" Emma asked, her small face illuminated by the ethereal fire. Before Olivia could respond, a voice spoke, not aloud but directly into their minds, warm as sunlight and ancient as the mountain itself. "You have come home, children of the mountain." Emma gasped, recognizing the voice instantly. "Mama." "Not exactly," the voice replied, tinged with Sarah's familiar warmth, but containing something more. Countless voices blended into one. "I am all the keepers who came before, including your mother. We protect the balance between worlds." The flame shifted, forming a vaguely human shape. For generations, the Reed and Bennett families were guardians together, one to tend the flame, one to watch the shadows. Until division came. Richard's pounding on the stone door echoed distantly, as if miles away rather than mere feet. "He seeks to control what cannot be controlled," the flame continued, "to claim shadow without respecting its purpose." "What is its purpose?" Olivia asked, finding her voice at last. "Balance. Light needs shadow as summer needs winter. Neither can exist alone." The flame flickered. "But now you must choose: claim the sanctuary, permanently binding yourselves to its protection, or return to the world above and face what comes." Emma's hand found Olivia's small fingers, intertwining with determination. "We stay," she declared. "Together." Olivia squeezed her hand in agreement. "We protect the mountain. As family." The flame brightened, expanding to encircle them both in warmth that felt like an embrace. "Then it is done." Outside, Richard's pounding ceased abruptly as the sanctuary door melted seamlessly into the surrounding stone, vanishing completely. The mountain rumbled once deeply, inn fell silent, sealing the sanctuary from those who would misuse it. 1 year later, visitors to Blackwood Mountain spoke of two young girls sometimes seen near the frozen waterfall, one with knowing eyes too old for her face, the other with a silver locket that caught the light like a star. They told of how the mountain seemed calmer, now its storms less violent, its paths somehow safer for those who approached with respect. And on particularly clear nights, those who knew where to look might glimpse a gentle flame burning in a high window of the expanded cabin, a light that never extinguished no matter how fierce the winter winds blew. The mountain had found its keepers, and they had found their home.